what we're here for today. So we've got this really cool lineup. We're kicking things off right now with our opening keynote on usable privacy with Justin Merhoff. And then we're going to get into a couple of talks about some... Yep. We're going to get into some talks about exposed personal data and how that's fueling AI-powered social engineering attacks and how to actually fight back against cyber exploitation, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to close out with our closing keynote on security gaps and that are quietly wrecking small and mid-sized businesses. So when we wrap, slides are going to be up on GitHub after the event. There will be a Discord link, blog, everything else will be in the chat. So let's get into it. So our opening keynote speaker has over 28 years of experience across government and private sector. His career spans genuinely like the entire modern era of internet. I'm sorry, I don't mean to like date you or anything. It's okay. I'm going to let him tell a little bit more about himself, but Justin has carved out a really cool lane in our industry that not many people think about, and it's accessibility and cybersecurity, and which is something that I just absolutely love. It's a good one. And so, yeah, Justin, today, he's bringing us that lens of privacy and making the case that usable privacy is the only privacy that actually counts. So please welcome Justin.
Awesome. Thank you, Ushi, and thank you for the opportunity. This is very exciting, especially being the keynote and opening this up. One thing that you mentioned that I'm very glad that you started with, and I'll talk to everyone about this, is remember, hacking is not necessarily what we think about it traditionally. What helps you in cybersecurity is having the mind of trying to do things that others might not have thought of, because that is exactly how attacks could happen. So in a previous role, I was very lucky to be within the accessibility community and digital accessibility community. And that was not by plan. I was doing that to further my career by taking a director and head of security position. But it quickly made me think about how in the privacy realm and in the cybersecurity realm, we are leaving people less secure, and we are keeping people out of our industry of, not industry, I like to call it a practice because it's become an industry, but the cybersecurity practice, because tools aren't accessible. So what we're talking about today, as this conference is primarily focused on privacy, is usable privacy is real privacy. So what I mean by that is, if the privacy controls that you put in place with your solutions are not usable and accessible for everyone, then you're literally doing exactly what you don't want. And I don't believe, in most cases, this is not done intentionally. Some people might think that it is, but most of the time, people are not purposely building things that not everyone can use. But when they're building that, they're not thinking of truly everyone that will be utilizing their solution. They're building it to probably more than 90% of the people that are generally going to be utilizing their digital solution. So when we do that, we're going to leave people more exposed, and that is not what our intent is. We're in this game to protect people, and hopefully what we talk about today will have you think about that when you're building your solution. So one thing that I've noticed also is we can't just come with the problem. We need to also talk about the solutions. But let's first look at the problem, and then I will give you some potential solutions that I have thought of. But again, I'm open to being wrong. If you see things from a different lens, please fire those questions off so that we can have an actual conversation. So when we're putting privacy controls in place, we're trying to build that layer of security to protect people's actual privacy. But when we do that, a lot of the times those controls can be too complex or difficult to navigate for a person with disabilities or without disabilities. If the person is utilizing assistive technologies such as a screen reader, and you block autofill of a portion of a site, let's say, for putting in their credit card, because you're doing it to protect it, there are other ways that you can allow autofill and still be secure. And if you want to learn about those, reach out to me. And also, this is, privacy is global. So if it's not written in the language that the individual user is consuming it, then you're going to have a potential privacy loss. Could have been lost in translation, or it's not translatable at all. So if we do that, if we don't, if we put those privacy controls in place and without thinking about this, then how are they meaningfully going to be able to protect their own data? They're not. So why this is a security issue is when you have hackers are not just people within the cybersecurity practice. People, especially people with disabilities, have to, what we're calling, hack through things all the time, because most of the solutions are not built for them. So they have to find other ways to circumvent. And they're not purposely circumventing the privacy controls. They just want to try to use them. But they have to figure out something to get it done. And when that happens, they might inadvertently share their sensitive data by doing that. And like I said, the security safeguards are circumvented, not on purpose, because the privacy control was not designed for the user. And with that, attackers can exploit people and exploit the fact that those controls aren't in place. So what are some solutions that we can bring? When you're creating your privacy controls, look at it from an accessibility lens and make sure that it is accessible by design. Because if the security and privacy control is not accessible and usable, then it's not covering everyone. And you are literally leaving people less secure and their privacy out there. And I know that's generally not people's intent when they're building these solutions. Make sure that the controls are understandable. How many organizations have you been at, anyone, and you've had to read all the policies to be able to start working, and you don't understand the policy? So it's not just the technical controls, the security awareness training, the privacy training, the policies that people have to consume and sign, especially around employment. A lot of times they're just agreeing to agree to it because they need a job. And if someone is utilizing assistive technology and they can't navigate that training or navigate the policy and or procedure, they have to have someone else navigate that for them. And potentially they could lose some information in getting that, translated to them because they can't utilize it. And one fundamental thing within cybersecurity, at least, and I believe privacy, that I find that is often missed is making sure that we're designing to the user and doing feedback loops. We should not be just creating controls and then sending that off to production and into a live function, a consumable product, without doing user testing. And also allowing the users to provide feedback. If something is messed up, you should be willing to being wrong and take that feedback and fix the product, especially when it comes to privacy and security. And don't allow usability to be an afterthought. Your solution could be the best security guarded thing ever, but if no one can use it, why did you design it? And transparency. You want to be as transparent as you can and build trust so that people can actually trust in what you're doing. If you have let's say, a password manager, and that password manager is not accessible, then how is someone's gran in the UK, for an example, who is blind, how are they supposed to properly maintain their data privacy? They can't. They might need someone else to help them navigate even their password manager. What if they're a teen getting a phone for the first time and they utilize this? I'm using the screen readers as an example. That's not the only case, but let's say that when they're utilizing the app, they're colorblind and they can't see the certain red colors that are the warnings, the warning flags. Then you are potentially creating another problem, even though you thought you were creating a solution. So why this matters now is there are already regulations and laws in place in different countries. And specifically, I'm going to touch on the example in Europe. So in Europe, on June 28th of last year, the European Accessibility Act went into place. And what that means is each of the countries in the European Union have fines that will be in place when solutions are not accessible. So I'll give an example. What it's initially targeting are end consumer digital products. So if think of buying a ticket to a concert or a play or a comedy show, if that website is not navigatable by assistive technology, each of those accessibility errors can be fined to the organization that creates it. So think GDPR, but for accessibility. And why that is important is we need both. For GDPR to properly cover the privacy of individuals, even the submitting a request to have your data deleted, if that submission form is not accessible, then we're leaving people behind and not being able to truly control their own data privacy. So in closing, if people cannot access privacy controls, then the protections aren't real. And so usable privacy is real privacy. Thank you so much, and I am open to any questions if we have some.
Hey, thank you so much, Justin.
Of course.
We had this conversation before, and anybody who wants to watch, we did do an episode about accessibility, and it's such a huge for me personally, because I have a disabled kiddo, it really hits home. But like before I had him, accessibility and privacy with our vulnerable citizens wasn't something I really ever considered, and I was just starting to kind of understand that side of kind of tech. You think about privacy and you think about identity theft and those kind of things. And that's about the extent that I had really thought about it. And I had not thought about, people like my son. We don't know where he'll go in life right now. It's too early to tell, but there's a lot of disabled and vulnerable citizens that just simply aren't of the mindset to be able to understand and conceptualize their own security and their own privacy, right. And trying to make privacy by default as we need to be starting there, and we need to not be necessarily leaving this on citizens, even those that aren't necessarily disabled or vulnerable. A lot of people just simply don't understand the technology, and they don't understand how people, are affecting their privacy and their security online.
Right.
And so it's so important, I think, that, people really understand, especially if you aren't somebody who, is intimately involved. And
Right.
I just love so much what you're doing. And I love that you get accessibility out there at just every turn. It's so important for us to remember it. And you bring it in such a way that there's like so many different aspects that I think a lot of us just haven't thought about.
It's a lot of different layers, and I'll throw a couple more in there. A lot of these new technologies that are coming out are going to help people with disabilities by giving them more control in their daily lives. And what I'm thinking about is some of the different implant technologies that are essentially going to be turning people into IoT devices. And, where are we looking at the security from that? Like, where's the firewall to make sure that the implant into that doesn't telecast information out in beyond where it needs to for that person to be able to use that technology? And
right, because we've seen that with like cars, with
exactly.
the Teslas and stuff. Yeah,
very similar. And the other piece too is, because accessibility is a spectrum, you also have, you touched on one piece of it, but you also have individuals that are very knowledgeable of wanting to protect their privacy, but the technical and the digital assets that are created are not designed for them as a user. So they're forced to do certain things. I'll give an example. I've done this on talks before, where there's useful technology that is meant to help people. It is not meant to disparage. So I'll use an example of one which I've been a volunteer for. There's an app called Be My Eyes that allows low vision and people that are blind to reach out to someone that is sighted to assist them. I'll give an example. One time where I volunteered, the individual was wanting help setting her thermostat in her apartment. The camera was directly zoomed into that, and it took not even maybe 10 seconds for me to provide information. But what if it would have been zoomed out? OSINT is at its peak now with all the accessible tech, or the tech out there, not accessible to where I'm but it's out there to be utilized. Someone could have found out where that person lived very easily. So we have to take into consideration that the tech that we're trying to put out there to help people is actually secure and is thinking of privacy in mind.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was meaning by privacy first. We have to start, we've always talked about like security and coding, and we need to make sure that, the things that we're creating and the applications we're creating are secure by default, and we need to have privacy by default.
Exactly.
We need to make sure that everyone is secure. And yeah, thank you so much for like bringing this up. I think it's such an important topic. Can you give me again what the name of the app was that you were talking about?
Be My Eyes.
Be My Eyes. Are there any other, to your knowledge, that are similar?
There is
for
another
other
one.
Types of disabilities.
I can't remember the name of it. Be My Eyes is the most popular of my for my knowledge, and they've even done collaborations with, I believe, Meta. And so the Meta glasses that are coming out also are connected to that app, so they could an individual user could connect to the Be My Eyes app utilizing their Meta glasses and have someone guide them.
Interesting.
Yes, it's
obviously there's lots of concerns about the Meta glasses, but I love that ability and that like bringing that in.
Right, but looking at it from security lens, we're for the most part, we're human. We want to help people. I don't think a lot of times that it's meant to hurt. But think about how I think about the Be My Eyes app is it is crowdsourcing help. And so what if a bad actor wanted to start utilizing that and purposely volunteering so that they could gain information on individuals? It definitely could be. So hopefully
easily
things like that come into play, and maybe have a better vetting process for the volunteers and such. So there are some different controls that could be put in place.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Of
much,
course.
Justin. I really do. I enjoy every time we get to chat.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for being our keynote. That was such an amazing talk. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.